Probably this time of the year, like me, you have a stack of graduation announcements about this thick, particularly if kids graduate from high school, but also maybe some from college or graduate school who are announcing the good news that they have completed that particular part of their education and they're ready to move on to their new phase of life. It reminds me of how we are constantly in transition and change really throughout our life. Despite the fact that people often will say to me, "Father, I hate change. I just wish things would stay the same." And I usually think in my mind that, boy, you mustn't be living in reality, because change is something that happens throughout our life. When does anything ever stay the same? You know, we're constantly going through transitions and transformations really throughout our life. And it begins in the very, very early days and early stages of when we were born. You know, conceived in our mother's womb, everything is safe and secure and everything's taken care of. We're nourished whenever we want, and et cetera, et cetera. And then when we're born, we suddenly have to breathe on our own. That's change. We suddenly have to, rely on someone else, to feed us and kind of make it known when we're hungry. That's a change. The first few months, few years of life is tremendous change. Growing and developing and learning to walk and talk and all those different things. Change is a reality that happens throughout life. I always enjoy in the beginning of the school year in late August going over to the campus at Piasta for Seton Catholic and seeing the little preschoolers and little kindergartners coming to school for the first time. And it's if you stop and think about it, for a lot of them, this is a pretty radical and different experience that they've never had before. For the most part, their entire world has been condensed to a few people who have nurtured them and taken care of them, usually their immediate family or their daycare providers or whatever it may be. Their social circle is very, very small. But when they begin school, it expands greatly and suddenly, and it is radical change for them at a very young age. It's also radical change for their parents who have to send them to school for the first time. We had this, when I was stationed in Mason City, and we worked at Newman Catholic, there was a great kindergarten teacher there. She taught kindergarten for like 40 years, which I think is just a ticket into heaven. But, she would have all these kids every year, and these little 5- and 6-year-olds would show up for school, and, they'd be gathered out in front of the building there, and, the older kids are running around and playing and such, and she's gathering all of her little ones around who are going to be in her class that year, and as the bell would ring on the building and the school saying it's time to start, on that very first day, she'd have all of her little kindergartners turn around, and she'd say, "Now wave goodbye to your mom and dad." And then she'd take them into the building. The parents are weeping and crying, and the kids are overjoyed and thrilled. Radical change. It happens throughout life. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. This week I'll celebrate 20 years of being a priest, and, I think of back over the past 2 decades. It's hard for me to say that. 2 decades. Can you believe it? It's like a long time. But there has been so many different things that have happened. Being ordained and going to my first assignment. First time I was made a pastor, every assignment that I've been transferred to in subsequent years and such. And one of the greatest joys is working with young couples who are preparing for the sacrament of marriage. And let us profess the common faith that we believe in as we say, "I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all things visible and invisible. I believe in one Lord Jesus Christ,